Yo, yo, yo! How on earth is Classic's player base going to fit into Outland? What is this?
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. So that whole TBC thing, I was thinking about it the other day. How on earth do you fit the population of Classic into Outland in a way that makes it not totally crowded 24/7?
Okay.
I mean, at launch, sure, it's going to be completely wild, but even a few months down the line, how's it going to look if Classic has proven to be so popular and how many players it's retained? Let me share some speculations.
I think the layering will need to take place because Outland is obviously smaller than Eastern Kingdom and Kalimdor, even though Outland is actually really huge. But I think with the amount of people playing on the servers nowadays, I think Outland is gonna be totally crowded because back in the days there were not so many people on the servers as there are now.
About how people are going to power level themselves on day one, because they will do. It's in people's nature on MMOs, and I kind of like guessing this stuff as well to see if I can get any of it right. First of all, if Blizzard underestimate the popularity of TBC as they did with Classic and as they did with Vanilla itself back in the day, somewhat ironically, they always seem to underestimate the player base. Anyway, if they do exactly that again and lowball server capacity for day one, getting through the Dark Portal itself may prove to be as much of a challenge as it did back on day one in TBC itself, which I just so happen to have done a video about TBC's new content as
Bro, this slimy motherfucker, this robot has no point for existing. It's just a massive amount of, I don't know, metal that is just going around in the Hellfire Peninsula and killing random people, but I love it.
a whole if you're interested, but the TLDR is that it was a laggy server crashing mess of a bottleneck. It may prove to be so again, but let's say we do get straight on through to our lovely new continent and Hellfire Peninsula. Now, do you remember what the opening quest involved there for both Horde and Alliance? They are your old faithful kill and collect quests, of course. Competition on the ground will be insane. Just picture it alongside Classic's launch for a second. In Classic, there was a huge population across 6 different starting zones, and for many, it lagged, servers crashed, and it was just generally unplayable. Imagine that sheer volume of players, and now we have to put all of them into one zone. That's what we're dealing with on day one of TBC. Now, I expect there to be a TBC beta, during which time the most hardcore of the hardcore will undoubtedly be heading into early dungeons such as Hellfire Ramparts in hopes of working out the most efficient way to farm through the entire thing.
I think if somebody wanna be like tryharding TBC so hard, they will just find some private servers and they will train on those. And what I actually experienced quite a lot is that private servers are kind of like overtuned. Like the difficulty out of the dungeons in retail and in classic, well, let's say for example in classic TBC is gonna be much lower than a lot of private servers. So if you wanna be just training for classic TBC, you just gotta go on the private servers, in my opinion. And I think Blizzard really needs to make sure that launch of the TBC is gonna be a good experience for the people, because it's gonna be massive, it's gonna be giant, and if people are not gonna be satisfied since the beginning, they're not gonna be having good time. I think that it might have a negative impact on a Blizzard's pocket, on their money, and they don't like it. So obviously, that's why they should be a little bit careful, and they should really try to improve the balance of their servers.
I mean, spell cleaves have always been a popular thing in Classic, especially in the early days. TBC will very much be a repeat of this trend. We're not going to have the one pull madness anymore, however, as in TBC, should it be launched on a later patch, there are AoE caps to many spells where they will not exceed the maximum base damage split across a large number of mobs. I'll go over this in a bit more detail at a later date, but yeah, those mages you see these days doing Maridon 1 pulls or ZG 11 or 12 packs or however many it is won't be a thing anymore in TBC.
So the more mobs you are actually attacking with your Blizzard, the damage is gonna be reduced more and more and more and more. Actually, I didn't even know about it. That's very interesting.
Warlocks may be able to bring it back in spell cleaves with Seed of Corruption though, we'll have to see. How about this then?
Warlock is the best AoE class in TBC. Seed of Corruption is the best AoE spell. Mages, step aside, Warlock is taking the crown.
Instead of risking or going through the Dark Portal, or the somewhat inevitable instant crashes and Hellfire Ramparts, it's surely going to happen, right? How many groups are going to try and ball straight into that dungeon? Doesn't seem like the play, in my opinion. Maybe people will ride straight through Hellfire Peninsula over to Zangarmarsh. There are also quests there that can be picked up at level 60 according to some TBC databases that I'm able to find. Alternatively, maybe you head straight into Coilfang Reservoir, doing the Underbog and Slave Pens, which will be completely fine to do at level 60. Keep in mind too that a 5-man group in Naxxramas gear are going to be like level 60 twinks. The power level of Naxxramas gear is completely off the charts. A 60 in Nax gear will be comparable to a level 70 in starter raid gear. It really is that powerful. Aside from this though, what if people just didn't risk Hellfire or even the Dark Portal and just farmed out vanilla dungeons? I mean, they're still level 60 content.
That's actually a really good idea. Because Hellfire and the Hellfire Peninsula, whole Zangarmarsh is gonna be overcrowded with people. So you can technically just stay in like Isar Kingdom, Kalimdor, and just be spamming vanilla dungeons. That's a pretty good, smart point.
Will still grant decent XP. Surely that's a good option to skip out all the lag and the risk of trying to get through the portal early. The gamble here is that the portal and Hellfire Peninsula are actually working by the time you're level 62 though. And on a side note, will we have a full rested XP bar once the levels are extended from 60 to 70? Or is rested XP only granted when you do have an XP bar? Couldn't find an answer to this. Either way, vanilla dungeon grinding just may end up.
I think that when TBC is going to be released, you shouldn't be having any experience on your bar, even if you are level 60. I think that you should be starting from level 60 and start grinding when TBC is released to level 61. I don't think you are supposed to be having like 99% experience bar in Classic, and then in TBC you just kill one mob and you're level 61. I don't like it.
Up being the play. We'll see. Next thing on the list here, server sizes and faction balance. Now, I've done a whole video on faction balance too going into TBC. Changes would probably make the game better.
Shamans for Alliance, Paladins for Horde. Very important things. I know that there's a huge movement, no changes. I got it. I understand you. I got you. I know where you're coming from. But there's this one really important factor, and that there's this seal of blood for Horde Paladins, Blood Paladins, and there is seal of vengeance for Alliance Paladins. And the problem is that the seal of blood is much more powerful, and Paladins, Retribution Paladins, are going to be doing much more damage on the Horde side than they were on the Alliance side. That's why I think it's really important that we will give seal of blood to Alliance and seal of vengeance to Horde Paladins as well. And a lot of private servers are actually doing this because they want to have balance classes. So imagine that you are supposed to be playing Paladin, and then you are picking, for example, so Alliance or Horde. But why should I go Alliance when Horde Paladin is stronger? Because obviously it is. At least it was in the past. But yeah, definitely Blizzard needs to be thinking about points like this.
Especially from a PvP perspective. As to whether we get any, quite doubtful, but hey, we'll see. The point here is that on the majority of servers, that there is quite a slant towards a certain faction, and for many servers, the Horde are going to be getting many new players with their overall more competitive racials, as well as Blood Elves and Paladins, because people care about performance and doing well, which is normal enough, I think. However, this is not making faction balance, which is already not really in a good place, even better. In fact, it'll be in a worse one. That's not ideal. Except this will be more of a problem come TBC than it currently is in vanilla. Even if we took the exact populations as of Classic now and ported them into TBC, faction balance will be massively higher on people's discussions when it comes to the game. In fact, I think it would be an even hotter topic than bots are at the moment, because it would be more impactful to the average person's time in game, especially on PvP servers. There are several reasons for this. TBC has 7 zones. Classic has about 40 or so. Now, when I mention this, of course, you can't compare them on a 1-to-1 scale, because Classic is comprised of 60 levels worth of content, TBC is 10. Classic has the whole progression of leveling and its systems hopping from one zone to the next or coming back to a zone at a later date, whilst TBC is far more linear. You complete one zone and then move on to the next. On top of this, how many endgame zones does Classic have? Eastern Plaguelands, Silithus, Winterspring, Burning Steppes maybe, just include the Black Lotus zones. Even then, Feralist is always busy due to Dire Maul. There's always plenty of Horde and Kargath in the Badlands. Searing Gorge is on the way to Blackrock Mountain. It's kind of hard to say what exactly is a late game or endgame zone in Classic. Well, there are of course many other players sitting in capitals raid logged with their buffs as well. I think overall the players, at least when they're in the open world, are quite spread out overall. Many lower level zones have players farming in them for items, golden pearls from Ashara, Plague Bloom and Fellcloth from Felwood, fishing from, well, everywhere really. There are so many reasons to be in.
This is what I like about Classic, that so many zones are very viable and they are having all these different types of resources. Even if, for example, you want to be herbing, you can be going to different zones because they are containing different types of herbs. Even though you want to be doing, for example, some like level 40 potions, you still need to be going to the lower zones to grab your herbs. I really like this about Classic, that all zones are viable.
A wide variety of zones, not just the end game zones, so to speak. In TBC, this isn't so much the case. All players of all levels will be in all zones all of the time, which sounds like a good thing. Maybe it is, but I think it's going to be a pretty bad experience on PvP servers. Imagine this, right? Your first leveling zone as a human in Classic is North Shire Valley. No PvP tag, even on PvP servers, no gathering nodes there, tame neutral mobs, a very relaxed and slow-paced introduction to the game. Just what you need. Your first leveling zone in TBC is Hellfire Peninsula, PvP tagged, aggressive mobs, level cap players with flying who will be after the same gathering nodes that you are, swooping out the sky to delete you, dungeons, heroic dungeons, and even a raid, all in your first zone. Imagine having rich thorium veins in Naxxramas outside of North Shire Abbey, because that's sort of the comparison you could make here. That doesn't sound all too appealing, to be honest, especially when leveling alts or coming into
TBC is gonna be savage. Classic, as I'm saying, this is noob friendly game. Spamming Frostbolt, spamming Shadowbolts, we got it. You know how to play your class, you're spamming Shadowbolts, you're a master. We got you. But TBC, baby, we are playing no games, we are accepting no babies here. TBC, you're gonna come into this expansion as a virgin and you're gonna come out as an alpha. Remember that.
To the game a bit later on, and you can bet that players with flying will compete with leveling players for herb and mining in every single zone of TBC. This is the second big change. With less zones, there is just more in every zone to make up for it. So whichever zone you are in, there are incentives for players who are level capped to be there, who will be after those same items that you are. Not just the gathering items like Fellweed from herbalism or Fell Iron Ore from mining, which are used for many items in blacksmithing and engineering, which
this freaking robot, I got killed so many times.
Will of course be in immense demand for a long time, even after launch, given how many players will be leveling new professions. And one more thing about professions actually, they are even more important in TBC than they are in Classic. Just for some examples, your best two-handed weapons for certain classes come from blacksmithing, and many people will be power leveling alchemy to be making primal
Lionheart Executioner.
as soon as possible, which itself is used in all kinds of endgame profession items. On top of this, there are the 3 towers as a world PvP objective, which when all of them are held by one faction, that faction will get a 5% damage boost in the zone, as well as the dungeons there. And there are also quests related to taking these as well, which I bet are going to be a real struggle for one faction on certain servers. And there's also world PvP objectives in Nagran 2 at Halar.
That's gonna be kind of actually unfair. Yeah, imagine that if there is really imbalance, and for example a server is having so many hordes, they are gonna be having advantage all the time because they are gonna be dealing 5% more damage in all dungeons in the Hellfire Peninsula. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough task for Blizzard to actually handle balancing in TBC.
Anyways, just in Hellfire Peninsula alone, there are 3 dungeons, including heroic dungeons, those being Hellfire Ramparts, Blood Furnace and Shattered Falls, a raid, McTheridan's Lure, and a world boss which can only be accessed with Flying Doom Lord Kazak. Those are many reasons for a level cap player to be active in what is technically your starter zone for the expansion. If you ever had an issue with ganking in Classic, you can multiply this by 10, and that's how things are going to look in TBC. Not even just at the start of the expansion either. I expect this to go on for months and months, potentially the duration of the entire thing.
Imagine Nagrand Arena at the beginning of TBC. For those who don't know, in Nagrand you have this arena, and you will need to kill like 7 bosses in a row. It's a group quest, so you gotta be at least 4 or 5 people to kill it actually. And you will, so you will be killing these bosses, but what it means is it's an open area. So the people from the opposite faction, they want to be doing this quest as well. So they're gonna be coming and they're gonna be ganking you. And you really want to do Nagrand Arena quest because the weapons are actually rare. It's not epic. They're rare. They're blue, and they are so powerful. The weapons are thinking like level 66 or 65. Really huge upgrade, and it's gonna be just massive, and it's gonna be gangfest. I can guarantee you that.
And TBC gives us more reasons to go out in the world than Classic ever did as well, and far more regularly at that. What do you leave your major city for in Classic? For the majority of people, farm gold, world buff, and raids. That's it really. In TBC we have dailies, which are, as the name suggests, daily, and many people will be completing those to earn various rewards that they give. Now, I should point out that dailies are very unlikely to be in the game from launch, and the first batch of them will likely come with phase 2 of TBC, and that's just based upon the actual content pacing of TBC itself here. But with dailies, you go to a zone, and they're pretty much all kill and gather type quests, your usual MMO affairs really.
Yeah.
And that creates a competition between Alliance and Horde players, or even competition in your own faction. So whether you are a minority faction on your server, Horde or Alliance, PvP realms look like they're going to be quite the struggle. I mean, sure, there's PvP on PvP servers, but you have to understand by now there's no rule set, there's no hidden code of honor. People don't just go out of their way to engage you in PvP, but if you've seen the extent people go to dispel world buffs in Classic, then you can bet people will literally do anything within their power to annoy or cause inconvenience. Strange really, it's as if they see people transferring off PvP servers as a win, but then there's less people to annoy. They slowly kill their own enjoyment of the game. On top of all this, we have flying, which means if little Jimmy gets home from school after getting bad marks in maths and fancies a nice 8-hour ganking session to make up for it, that's going to be extremely easy to do. Artisan flying is 280% speed, remember, there is no getting away from that without your own equally fast mount. I don't know how many different ways people will come up with creative ways to be annoying, but ganking is one of those ways which I can almost say will be a certainty, as well as the open world resources and world objectives. PvP servers are going to be absolutely brutal in TBC for sure, and some people will be into that. Best of luck to them, but I'd be pretty wary if you're in a minority faction at the moment. In fact, as a person who currently plays Alliance on a Horde majority PvP server, and who is going to be continuing to play Alliance in TBC, I don't see a scenario where I would willingly remain on a PvP server with the knowledge that I am in the minority and expect the increased levels of activity in the open world for all zones for the entire duration of the expansion really.
I think a lot of people who are currently playing Alliance on PvP servers, they will there's a high chance that they will actually consider re-rolling on a PvE server, because for Alliance it might be brutal. I don't know what Blizzard is going to be doing, is going to do, but it's just that the ratios on the Horde side are just better. It is what it is. Unfortunately, in Wrath of the Lich King, we're gonna switching it up a little bit, and Alliance is gonna be having the best ratios, especially for PvP. Humans in Wrath of the Lich Kings have like their own racial insignia, so they actually don't need the insignia as a trinket. What it means is that humans can be having 2 DPS or 2 healing trinkets, which is a massive upgrade compared to the other classes, other races.
It's not that I don't mind a bit of world PvP, especially the group versus group stuff, but if I'm going to have to enter an open world battleground every time I go to Sketis or the Neverwing Shelf, that doesn't really sound like my cup of tea. I remember Tarren Merle versus South Shore, and I remember getting tired of it after a few days. Sure, those two things aren't on the same scale, but it's going to be the same kind of spirit behind the activity.
It's definitely going to be something similar. I think that a lot of people nowadays who are playing World of Warcraft, they just want to play it casually, you know, and they just want to have a good time. So I think that this ganking fest is going to be like convenient for some type of people, for a special group, but I think for the majority of the people is gonna be kinda annoying. So of course it's funny if you are the one who is ganking, but it's not so nice when you are on the receiving end.
Isn't it? And to top it off, in TBC there is no reprieve from the open world PvP like we had with Battlegrounds coming early in Classic. I think PvE servers are going to see a huge number of transfers, if not pre-launch, then shortly after people get a feeling firsthand of TBC PvP servers. And because of the smaller landmass, massive population, and huge resource competition for every zone, I expect layering, a lot of layering. More layers than we saw in Classic for sure. I think my server had between 4 to 6 early on. Even now, my server's still locked and has 2 layers. And now, for all intents and purposes, it's a bit of a content drought in Classic whilst we wait for Phase 5 and AQ to be announced. TBC, no exaggeration, could be layered for the entire expansion. Well, I guess that's a lot of Doomlord Kazakh and Doomwalkers then, isn't it? I think if Classic is anything to go by, that it's been a lot more than a brief nostalgia trip that so many expected it to be. Despite how wonky it is with its lackluster specs, world buff metas and so on, it's still hugely popular. There is clearly a demand for this kind of old school MMO. And TBC just has more to do in terms of dailies, achievements, reputations for keys, heroic, the rewards, the tabards, more mounts and so on. A much more expanded end.
Also PvP is gonna be much more basically, or you can actually have something from PvP, as I mentioned, arenas, you're gonna be getting ranking, arena points, battlegrounds, honor and stuff like that.
Game basically. I think it will retain an even larger volume of players once the dust settles. It's just, given everything I've just said, how on earth will it cope with a sheer volume of players? Will Blizzard really take the number of returning players seriously this time? And how will things look on PvP servers then, compared to now? Let's hope Blizzard puts some serious consideration into it and does its best to get it right, because it's going to be a massive challenge. In any event, we have a while left in Classic, I'm sure. Just had this on my mind, so I wanted to give it a little talk over. Let me know your thoughts. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video very soon. If you like what you see, give the video.
Fellas, please support WillE and subscribe to his channel. You can find the link to the original video in the description below. Also, please subscribe to my channel, leave a like, leave a comment. Write me in the comment section below what video am I supposed to be reacting to in the next one, and you might be in my next video. I will just put you in my video, so please comment. I'm reading all comments, so just let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and yeah, TBC is gonna be massive, and honestly, I'm super excited for it. I love TBC expansion. As I said, right now, people in Classic are kind of saying that they're kind of bored because there is not so much things to do. There is the objective not so clear. You are defining the objective. What do you want to do? Do you want to be leveling out? So many people are just leveling out because there's not that much to do. It is what it is. But in TBC, it's gonna be otherwise. TBC, like reputations, PvP grind, PvE grind. It's gonna be massive, fellas, and it's gonna be super. I'm super excited for this. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.